Hey everyone, welcome to today's live stream. I am really excited to be here today. Today's topic was requested, so that's really cool. So yeah, I wanted to go over some of the things I've learned from my years of traveling. Well, I say years, maybe the past 4 years. I've done so many different like solo travel trips internationally. And so I think at this point, I've definitely learned quite a few lessons and definitely learned a lot about myself through the travels. So I guess to start off, I wanted to kind of talk about just simply the difference between, introvert versus extrovert and, what some of the differences can be in that regard. So if you don't know, an introvert is someone who gets energized by having some time alone, and extroverts get their energy by being around other people. So a lot of people kind of confuse introverts with like antisocial. So it's not that introverts are antisocial. It's just that after socializing, we need to be alone. We need more time alone to energize and recharge and do our own thing. So it's just a different dynamic in how we choose to interact with the world. So yeah, so with that, I would say one of the big things I learned with like solo travel is knowing that about myself, that I knowing that I need that time and that space, and incorporating that within my trip. So one of the things I did when I did my first ever solo travel trip, international trip, well, maybe not my first one, because my first one was actually to Canada, and that wasn't too extreme because, Canada versus US, even though Canadians are better, but socially speaking, it wasn't that big of a cultural gap. But my first, I would say, big international trip, solo trip, was to Spain, and then I also traveled through Morocco in that same trip. So what I did, though, within that trip is I booked Airbnbs as opposed to staying at hostels. And I know some people rave about staying at hostels because it is more economical way to travel. Is you can get somewhere to sleep for cheap. So if you're not familiar with what a hostel is, it's basically kind of like a dorm or a military barracks, in my opinion. But you're in a room with a bunch of other people with there's bunk beds, and and so that doesn't work for me because I know I need my space, as I said, with the whole introvert thing. So what I did when I travel is I choose to stay in Airbnbs. And so one of the things I want to cover is with solo travel is how to meet people, right? Because if you're going alone, how to have people to interact with. So one of the ways that I did that was booking Airbnbs, where even though I would have my private room, I would book Airbnbs. If you're not familiar with Airbnb, you can either book like a room where it's shared, or someone's couch, so that's called like a shared living space, or you can book a private room in someone's house, so they live in the house but they rent out a room, or you can book a whole apartment or flat or whatnot. So what I chose to do is, one, to still kind of be budget friendly, is I would book a private room in someone's house. And so that way I still had my own space where I can close the door and, have my own place. But then I would still be able to be around locals and other humans, So that helped. And I found that to be really, really beneficial. So like when I was traveling to Spain, a lot of the hosts and families I stayed with just amazing, amazing people. And so it felt so nice to have that kind of local touch. So in Spain, I stayed in a lot of different places in Spain, but all the hosts that I stayed with were very friendly. And what I really liked with staying in Spain is that some of the hosts that I stayed with didn't speak any English at all, which was awesome to me because it allowed me to actually use my Spanish. And so that was really cool. And then what was really cool too is when I went to Morocco and I stayed with this family in Morocco, and they were just so amazing. Like that was still to this day, I would say that's probably like one of the highlights of places that I've stayed, or just experiences that I had, was like staying with this family. Because I mean, if I'm being real, it's just because they fed me. And so it's just so cool, like every day. And because that is one thing I would say can be stressful, at least for me as an introvert, and also because I do have some sort of levels of like social anxiety and things. So even though I do put myself in positions to put myself out there and challenge myself, and like I said, I'm already traveling, across the country and doing all these things, my biggest challenge would always be like feeding myself, because it's like I would have to hype myself up, right, to go to this next restaurant, or to go into the grocery store even. Oh man, I remember my first time in Spain, one of the first cities I was at. I needed to go to the grocery store and I was too scared to go in, and I would like circle the block. Like I kept circling the block, and I was just like so scared. And then eventually I, worked up the courage and finally went inside and, got the food that I needed. And and then unfortunately, because even though I had worked on my Spanish before going, I ended up running into a word I didn't know. And then there was like this awkward moment of checking out where basically he asked me if I wanted a bag, but I didn't know the word for bag. And so I was just kind of looking at him, and I guess I could have said, I don't understand. Odds are he probably spoke some English or whatnot. But anyways, that was one thing. So again, going back to the family in Morocco. It wasn't expected. Like it wasn't like on the Airbnb. Nowhere did it say, food is provided, but every morning they would bring me breakfast, like on like a silver tray, and like with Moroccan tea, and just these olives that I love. And olives, if you don't know this about me, it's one of my favorite foods. Like I remember as a kid, I used to just dream and fantasize of one day being an adult and being able to buy all the olives that I wanted. So it was just a dream moment of just having this Moroccan breakfast brought to me every morning. And I actually ended up extending my stay there. I was only supposed to stay there like a week, and then I just stayed longer. And I mean, I gave them extra tip and everything. Like I contributed. I didn't just like, I don't know, mooch off them or anything, but it was just really nice. And they were really sweet. And by the time I did leave there, it was so cool. Like they gave me a ride to the port, because I was taking the ferry back over to Spain. And I remember they were like giving me hugs and, hugs and kisses and everything. And it's just like, oh, it just felt so, so sweet. And so that's one of the benefits I have found with staying with families in Airbnbs when I'm traveling alone. Another way that I have interacted with people while I'm traveling alone has been using the couch surfing app. But not for couch surfing. So couch surfing, if you don't know, it's like a website where basically a lot of people open up their homes for people to come and stay with them for free. But there's also a social element to couch surfing app, to where when you're in a particular city, you could go on the app and see who else is in that city, who, makes themselves known. You can choose to make that public, and then you can message people and meet up with them and things like that. So I met a lot of cool people that way. Obviously with that, something like that, use common sense and be careful, meet in public places, all that jazz. I personally chose to usually only meet up with women, because that felt safer to me, as opposed to meeting up with guys. But also there would also be like meetup groups and things in the couch surfing app as well. So usually in those situations, if it's a group, I don't mind, hanging out with guys and things like that. And I've also, I've met a lot of cool guys as well. But usually for one-on-one, meet for coffee situations, I would prefer, usually I feel safer meeting with other women. But that was, I have tons of friends that I've met through using that app as well. And then another way I've met up with people through Airbnb. So Airbnb, yes, you can book places to stay, but you can also book experiences through Airbnb. So experiences could be like, taking a cooking class, food tour, or just all kinds of different cool things. So that's a fun thing to do, because when you book that, then it's usually like a group. If it's a group experience, then you meet other people that way as well. And one of the things I really love doing on the Airbnb experiences, there's a lot of photographers that usually offer their services and those experiences. So I did this like in Barcelona. I met up and it was a photographer, and so it was a whole group of us. We went with him, and then he like took us on a tour through Barcelona, and then took pictures of us. And it was done in like a candid type style, and it was really cool. Like, so I got a lot of, and so it was nice about that, because when you travel alone, it can be really difficult to have to get photos of yourself. And obviously, you can ask someone, hey, do you mind taking a picture of me on the street? Or also, I had a tripod. So there's pictures that I have of myself where I just set up my tripod, set the timer, and then you walk over and just pose. And then, so there is that as well. But what's cool about doing the experience you have a professional photographer taking pictures of you in the location. So I've done that in a lot of places. And then so that's been really nice to have some nice professional pictures of myself, but in these really cool international destinations. So yeah, definitely Airbnb experiences is cool. I've also done different like tours and things like that through there. And again, just meet people, because you're just with a group of people who are also, fellow travelers or whatnot. And it's really cool to have an adventure with new people. So that is another way. Speaking of tours, and a lot of cities when you're traveling have like free tours, walking tours. So that's something I've done as well. And so again, you're with a group of people. I guess I should have prefaced all this. All of my traveling took place prior to pandemic. So I'm not sure how many of these things still are applicable today or will be after, or, coming in the future, but I don't know. I'll just share this anyways, and hopefully something will be of help to others. But yeah, so free tours, and then basically the premise is usually with the free tours, because nothing is for free, as they say. So they usually have some stop within the tour that is where they're expecting, like with some sort of shop or restaurant or something, and then usually. And then you're expected to, of course, tip the tour guide afterwards. So, yeah, which is pretty good deal. So I've enjoyed a number of walking tours in different places. And then another way that that I usually interact with people too is, well, at least this one was when I was traveling through Europe. Is there's a service there called BlaBlaCar. And it's a bit different than Uber in the fact that, let's say if you're trying to get from one city to another. So let's say if I'm trying to get from, Malaga to Barcelona, then instead of taking the train, you could look on BlaBlaCar and see if there's someone who's planning to make that trip, within the next or on the day that you're wanting to make that trip. And then you just pay to have a seat in their car. And then you're able to basically go on a road trip. And then so I met a lot of cool people doing that as well. So there's so many ways to meet people, even if you're traveling alone. And then you could still stay somewhere, like I said, have your own private room, where if you're introvert, you can have that privacy and that space, but then still be able to venture out, to have the adventure, right, of traveling, but then still be able to take that time to yourself. And then, outside of that, I did spend, like, I always enjoy going for walks through the cities that I'm visiting, just alone, having some quiet time. Sitting at a cafe is always a fun experience, and just people watching. There's so much to enjoy while traveling. And in my experience, I mean, so far, all the travels, I honestly can't think of anything crazy that has ever happened. Like, all the people I've pretty much interacted with have been amazing. And yeah, I feel like in general, I feel like most humans are decent. That's my experience. Obviously, if your experience is otherwise, I'm sorry. But so far, my experience, most humans tend to be decent. And then, of course, like I said, use your common sense and, don't just, go wandering off with strangers in a dark alley or something. I don't know. But yeah, I have had just so much fun through the years traveling and meeting people. And and that's one of the things I've enjoyed as far as having an online business because it has allowed me to have that freedom. And that was my goal, why I even started my business in the first place, is I wanted something that gave me like time freedom and location freedom so I can go where I want. Like one of my dreams is to be in a position to where, if I have a friend tomorrow that's like, hey, let's go to, I don't know, Bangkok or somewhere, like I'm just like, all right, cool, let's go, and to have that level of freedom to where it's not a big deal. And so I am definitely thankful. And what's cool, I guess something that can be looked at as far as this time on the Air Force, more people are realizing that a lot of jobs can be worked remotely, so that's something to look at, where maybe even if you don't own or operate your own business, it's now, I would say, probably easier to be able to find positions where you're able to actually work remotely, and then you could still have that freedom of traveling to where, you just take your laptop, make sure you have some Wi-Fi, and then you're able to experience a whole different city. So like what I would do, because a lot of these times I didn't even have the structure or team and systems that I have now in my business. So I would still actually be working quite a bit during this time. But still, what's nice is I would spend extended times in a lot of the cities. So, I'd spend like a week or so. So then that way, through the day or whatnot, I'm able to work, and then then I could go out in the afternoons and adventure and see different things. So that was usually what I would do, is just have a longer time. So even though I am on my laptop for a good chunk of it, at least the other chunk of it, I'm able to explore and experience new sights and sounds and smells and just all the wonderful things that come with traveling. So I would definitely say that those are the main, I guess, tips that I have as far as traveling and being an introvert, is just make sure you make that time for yourself. Get yourself a private room to where you have that space, and then don't be afraid to go on a few adventures to meet other humans and put yourself out there. And of course, it could be nervous at first, but once you do it, then I've always been pleasantly surprised. So I'm definitely one, before I do things, my nerves go crazy, but then one of my philosophies, just feel the fear and do it anyway. So even though I may, it's outside my comfort zone, it's not something I'm used to, but I do it, I show up, and then eventually, I may be nervous for the whole first part of it, but eventually a point comes where it's like, okay, this isn't so bad. This is kind of cool. These people are cool. Or, if the experience doesn't turn out that well, at least I could say I showed up, So that's definitely a philosophy that I always stand by with traveling. Let's see. What are the points that I want to touch on? I think that's the main thing. I'll probably go ahead and wrap up the stream now. And then I think I may do a video in the future, I guess, sharing some of, my travel hacks, because I do feel like I've learned quite a few different hacks and systems and things to make the whole travel easier, at least for me. So I'll probably share that in a different video. But of course, go ahead, let me know if you have any questions or any requests of topics that you would like me to talk about. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.